One of the main things that over the last 10 years that I've been actually researching, when I was studying psychology, when I was studying helping clients as an executive consultant, I was trying to figure out, like, what makes certain executives, certain people more successful than the others, what makes certain companies more successful, and what makes, certain, executives or professionals a lot more happier. Because I saw there's a quite a strong relationship between happiness and success and how well you perform. So I see that, and I see when I was working with professionals, like the ones who are generally happier also tend to perform better. And then I wanted to know, they're going through the same issues as I'm going through. How are they responding to these things differently, right? So that's what I started to research, and then I wanted to know what makes people achieve more than the other. Why do certain people achieve their dreams and why others don't? And is there actually a way to make it happen? So these are the questions I've been researching myself. So that's essentially what I will talk about from what I found out so far, and the strategies that work for me. So we'll talk about that. So one of the main things that my research strategy have been always essentially, study the best to become the best. So when I look at, when, like, I created essentially a pool of individuals, right, that I thought, from, I mean, we don't know for 100%, but I have, because I haven't met any of them yet. They look happy what they're doing. They seem to love what they're doing. They look happy what they're doing, and they seem to be very successful. So I started to collect habits, right, and thoughts and mindsets of people, right, and to see, what type of habits, these individuals have. Like, for example, what type of habits does Jeff Bezos have, Warren Buffett has, Oprah Winfrey has, Elon Musk have, Steph Curry. Like, basically different fields. So basically, professional who I consider to be, you know I can idolize. You know what I mean? So I wanted to see what makes him so different. So, and then I started to create, essentially, make a list of patterns. A list. Basically, I started to recognize a pattern, actually, in them. All right, when I started to look at how Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Oprah Winfrey, how they set goals, very different from, how I used to say. I'm not gonna say average people because, people, I cannot really say with average. I can tell you that I didn't really set goals that way, and I can tell, okay, that could be one of the reasons that I didn't have what I wanted in my life, and the way they, conduct the rest of their life as well. So there's quite a few patterns that I recognize in terms of habits, but there also, I recognize there's quite a interesting attitude towards life and towards other people, towards business, among these individuals. And it's not what I initially thought, how they look at the world. So how it seems like what I've discovered is that how you look at the world reflects into your reality. And that's what I saw among them. Okay. So what we'll talk about specifically in this workshop, I'm gonna cover these 4 points, right? So basically, the 6 key positive habits to develop from what I discovered from, highly effective professionals, and then I'm gonna give you a framework how to actually build them, and how to be consistent as well, and I'm gonna talk about a little bit about the 3 levels of the mind. I think that will provide a lot of insight for a lot of people, specifically discussion about the subconscious mind and how that affects your emotions, your beliefs, and your reality. I think that's this, like, understanding specifically the 3 levels of the mind. The subconscious, superconscious, conscious mind was a huge difference maker in terms of me getting a better handle of my emotions. Um, and that's one of the things that I wanted to introduce in this session, because that's something, like, knowing how to specifically direct my subconscious mind had helped me tremendously to deal with my emotions, because I realized a lot of the inconsistencies with my behavior came from not being able to handle my emotions. And specifically learning about this 3 level model about the mind really shed light into that, and I'm going to be talking about that as well in this call. Okay. And then we'll talk about specifically, how to manage your emotions and your behavior, specifically through techniques that I've discovered are how to reprogram your subconscious mind for success and happiness and wealth. Okay, so that's what we will talk about. So one of the main patterns that I recognize among like highly effective individuals. This is again, I'm not saying this is everybody, but I saw a consistent pattern among the highly effective individuals. People tend to have, high emotional intelligence, what I would even call, tend to have a tendency to keep a journal, and they use it to essentially write down their ideas, write down their goals, their actions, their challenges, and specifically things like emotions. Like how I use the journal, when I was going through a challenging time in my life, was I would literally unload everything into my journal through my emotions, how I, if I'm feeling bad, angry, anything to do with any emotions or any thoughts, I would essentially unload it to my journal. And that's essentially when I started to see, recurring triggers, recurring patterns that I recognized that I didn't know about before, that was affecting me. So what I started to do, because I started to see what my goals are, what my actions are, and things that I should be avoiding. When I started to see these things, I started to get a better idea of what I should be doing and working in my life. So one of the things that I recommend for anyone who's just starting to improve, go on their, spiritual journey, or, the transformation journey, keeping a journal just to, keep your ideas, keep your goals, your challenges or emotions, just to keeping a journal to use it as a second brain will become very useful and very valuable for your personal growth. And I cannot, the thing is, this is the, it's one of those things I cannot just emphasize the importance of it enough. That's one of the main things I put it as one of the first lessons in this workshop, is because over the last 2-3 years, this technique, or using a journal and writing ideas, thoughts, everything into it, have made a huge difference in my mental state. And I feel like I've been able to, last 2 years, or I've been able to essentially publish 4 books, and one of the main reasons I've been able to do that is because of the journaling practice. I just simply just wrote down ideas that I want to talk about, as me giving advice to myself, and then I just literally wrote that on the journal, and then put it and publish a book as books. So that's one of the main things I would recommend, that if you're just starting out this journey, keeping a journal. And it's a big, a common pattern I recognize and see among billionaires as well, specifically, people like Richard Branson, Warren Buffett. They all seems to be keeping journals and taking notes of what they do and how they behave and what decisions they make. Okay, so that's a very important one I would recommend for anyone who's not doing it already. Start small. It will have a huge impact in your life if you continue to do it as a common a practice. Okay, any questions about journaling?
Hey, dude, like I had a question actually.
Go ahead, Tessa. Please.
So hi everyone. So my question is, the problem that I sometimes notice with journaling is that sometimes I tend to spiral in, like if I'm in a particularly negative state of mind,
Okay.
and I write about it, I feel like it amplifies the
Yes.
negativity somewhat.
Yeah.
And then I don't ever journal again. Like
Okay.
I dump the negative stuff, but then I don't have a positive association with journaling, so I tend to
Oh.
journal when I'm in a negative state of mind, and then that's
Yeah.
it. But yeah, how do you kind of deal with that?
I know that's it's funny you mentioned that. I actually should have mentioned I went through the same issue when I was actually first starting to journal, and I was starting to unload my thoughts and my emotions into it. So one of the things that actually helped was I started to recognize all my challenges were actually goals that I should be setting. You see what I'm saying? So for example, say that, oh, I'm not getting enough clients for my business. Okay, that means I should be targeting to get about 10 clients this quarter. That should be my target. And then am I writing down the activities and the actions? So I didn't put that in the beginning. I would, like you did, right? Like I would just like unload how I feel, but I didn't really like turn that my problems or my challenge into a goal that I can like research into and go after. You know what I mean? So that was a big problem I ran. It's a great question, by the way. I think that's it's a common one that a lot of people who journal go into. It creates, and you will see that if you like, I didn't know how to do that before, like how to turn that into, and I didn't even hear about that. And then I would continually dwell in my negative emotions. And one of the things I would say is that as much as you can, you want to switch away from dwelling in negative thinking and negative emotions and go into more problem solving, solution oriented. Like you have to put the subconscious mind into that state. We'll talk more about that, but that's the idea of that. I would go about if I was in your situation, you know. So does that make sense, Sissa?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Perfect. So that's what I would do for journaling, and a very important practice. And the next thing is common pattern I saw in specifically highly effective people, in billionaires, or highly performing athletes, world class athletes. So one of the main things that I've discovered is how detailed, how much attention these individuals put into goal setting. And then it seems like the way they look at goal setting is they look at goal setting itself as a skill, rather than something, they're like, how do I say, it's like, when you're starting to walk, right? Like, you don't say, if you're not walking, or just forget about the idea of walking, right? If you're a child, you're going to slowly develop it. So goal setting for these individuals is something like that. It's something that is very necessary for their life. So, and for us, like, one of the things I remember my life when I didn't have goals in my life, right? So I realized how difficult it was and how lack of direction I had. But when I see with people who are highly successful, goals set, they actually don't really start or do anything without goal setting, without setting a goal that is, lot further down in their life, and then reverse engineering it. So that's one of the main things I discovered when during my research, is how much scientifically and how much time these individuals spend on goal setting. So to make the process easier, what I've done is I've created basically a simple step system, right, to help you achieve your goals. And it will make it easier. And this model I've actually used, it actually have components, like I basically researched how Warren Buffett sets goals. So it has components from him. It has components from Jeff Bezos, which called the regret minimization technique. We will talk about that. And then it has also have Tony Robbins a technique on how to create action plans. So it combines this model that I'm going to be showing you. It has multiple people's models in it, and especially people who have been successful. So I kind of like borrowed their system and then kind of created a unified system that basically helps me set goals. So this is this process, and I used to set goals. So hopefully you will find it useful as well. So the first step in this process is essentially writing down, coming up with about 25 lifetime goals in your life. So for this, I actually this idea of coming up with 25 lifetime goals, actually I learned it from Jeff Bezos. He uses and recommends a system called the regret minimization framework. So what that system does is that it asks you to essentially advance your life to 100 years old or 120, however you want to live, right? So let's say that I want to live till 100, and then he asks you to think about and imagine your life at 100 and look back and see what you wish you accomplished, right? So for example, I want to write a certain number of books by the time I'm 100. I want to visit certain places. I want to do certain specific things. So this process, essentially, you sit down and take the time. What do I actually want to come up with, what I want to do, accomplish in my lifetime while I'm alive. So what it does is essentially, later in your life, it minimizes the regret of you not doing that activity, right? So that's what it's called, that regret minimization technique. You basically advance your life, right, to 100 years old, and imagine and look around you and say, what do I wish that I accomplished, right? And this what this do is it also shift your subconscious mind and conscious mind to focus on the future rather than dwelling in the past. So in the beginning, because if you have a lot of practice and habit of just dwelling in the past and thinking about the past, it will take some time to kind of come up with these 25 goals if you don't have the practice. But just what I would say, enjoy the struggle of you setting goals, because that means if you're struggling and if you don't know how to do it properly and it's confusing, that's okay, you're growing. It's a skill that needs to be developed and grown. So this will essentially help you shift over your mind instead of dwelling and living in the past, to focus on the desires within your subconscious mind or within your heart, to bring it out within you, right? So you can see it. So, and then write them down. Don't keep it in your head. That's one of the biggest things I see in these individuals, is that they have a tendency to write things down, like we talked about in the journal session. Okay, so 25 goals. Take your time. I'll give you some examples on what some of these goals can be, but the idea is essentially spend the time to come up with 25 goals that you prioritize. So I recommend, for everyone, prioritize peace and happiness as number one goal. For me, without peace and happiness, all other goals really don't really mean anything for me. So that's why I do everything that close. Even these workshops or the books and courses I create, it's actually bringing me peace and happiness when I'm creating and developing them. So because I know it actually helped me, so when I'm helping other people with the same stuff, it makes me happy, right? So one of the things, that's what I would recommend you do. Okay, and then what you do is next is essentially select, right? Well, after that 25 goals, select the most important, your favorite 5 goals out of that 25 goals, right? So this is coming from actually Warren Buffett. He recommends that he also recommends that we come up with 25 goals and focus on 5 goals. But one of the main things I noticed, that when you focus on limited number of goals, it helps you focus and identify the thing that would make the highest difference, right? So for example, your number one goal in this list should have a huge impact in your life if you were to achieve it, right? It could be you getting a specific role, or maybe you're starting a company, or maybe you're completing a specific project, a personal project or work project that can have a huge impact. So it should be the most important 5 goals for your happiness and for your development. Okay, so you write the 25 goals, you come up with the first most important 5, right? And then you start with that. Okay, so I see Nat has a question, so let me take a look at it. Let me see what she says. So what if your goals or vision board has to offer? Yeah, so honestly, for me, that happened as well. So I'll talk about that, Nat. So one of the things that really helped me kind of move with my goals is creating 90-day plans. So I know a lot of people say, oh, what is your yearly goals? What are you doing? They are great. I also have like 2-3 year goals, but the way I plan things is 90 days at a time, right? So for example, like I have a goal to basically publish 1 book every quarter, right? If I cannot do it, it's fine. I'm just pushing it to the next quarter or next 90 days. But the way I plan things, like it's in university, right? You know how in university you have 12 weeks, and then you start to get things done and you do a whole bunch of work and assignments, and then it's very scheduled, right? So what I recommend you do for anyone is plan out what are something that you can accomplish within the next 90 days, and then start listing out actions, at least 30 actions that you can do in the 90 days to push forward you with the goal, right? So first of all, don't have too many goals. Don't work on all 25 goals. Max 5 goals, right? And then basically write down about 30 actions that you can do to make sure that that happens. And one of the things that I also go through this issue where sometimes stall in certain goals. One of the things that I create a Google sheet, right? And then I basically have 5 different sheets for each goal. And on the top, it says what is the goal I want to hit, right? And then below it lists out all the actions that I want to do. And then I basically check them off as I complete them, right? So that's the kind of the process I work through. And if something doesn't have enough time, so sometimes one of my project, one of the courses that I was initially planning to create, it instead of taking 90 days, it took 3 or so 90 days. So it took 3/4 to create, but it was a really good product, right? So it took that while, but the fact that I created 90 days, it created that sense of urgency. And then you will notice this when you started to do this practice, is that you do most of your work is like in the last like week or 2 weeks, right? So imagine that, right? So imagine like if you're only setting like yearly goals, most of the work you will do essentially it will be in December, because you're trying to catch up and finish it, right? But if you set 90-day goals, you're essentially trying to catch up and finish it 4 times in the year. Like what I'm doing right now, I'm trying to like, complete certain number of workshops before this quarter is done, because this quarter is for me technically is done on March 31st, right? So we had January, February, March. So that will be 3 months, 90 days. For by 31st, I need to have completed certain number of workshops, right? So that's kind of how I do it, right? So that's what I would recommend for you as well. Say that you're looking to land a job or land a promotion. You can say within the next 90 days, I want to land this job, and then list out the activities, specific activities that you can do, at least 20 to 30, I recommend, right? That you can do. And if an activity becomes difficult, just break it down to 2 activities or 3 activities into smaller steps. Okay, so that's how I don't just set a goal. Like I say, I create a system behind it, right? Even if I don't, what I discovered is that these individuals, especially billionaires, these are the main things they do. First, they set the goal. How does the end product look like, and then reverse engineer it, right? And then the reverse engineering process involves basically outlining specific steps that will help them achieve the goal, right? So that's how I do it. So that's what I call a system. And obviously you can keep it simple for now and coming up with a specific task, and then improve it over time with adding more tasks and adding more things that you need to do. So I love me working working in tech and Oracle. I've seen a lot of projects, people try to do a lot of project failures. And what I can tell you is that me coming from personal development and the corporate side, these systems will be the most effective that I've discovered, at least for me, when I'm doing projects and for my clients, because it gives you a really good idea of what you need to work on and whether you are meeting those projects or not, right? Or meeting those goals or not. So that's what I have for goal setting. Let me know if that makes sense. If that goal setting system makes sense. Okay, so perfect. Let's see, any questions? No, perfect. Okay, so I want to also kind of talk about the difference between the input goal and output goal, because I know this is something that seems to be stressing out a lot of people about goals. And I know that goal setting is actually, in the beginning when I was starting to first set goals, it actually stressed me out. It stressed me out, and I couldn't really concentrate, right? I feel like I was late, and I feel like I had too many things to do. So all this mess, right? So I started to figure out, okay, I need to makes it like goal setting supposed to be helpful to me. How is these guys doing it to make it better? Because for me, it was stressing me out. So I started to see there's a reason why it was stressing me out, because I didn't know what the difference was between input goals and output goals, right? For example, right, I use an example to kind of illustrate this point, because it's the best way to do it. So for example, say that you want to land a job, right? And then let's say we are doing it, 90-day period. So an input goal, right? So let's talk about the output goal. So output goal is essentially the byproduct, right? So essentially land a job that pays 100K within 90 days. That could be the output goal. That's the goal that you want. But this is landing a job that pays 100K is not something you can action on. You cannot take action on it, right? There's something else you have to action on, like applying, like creating your resume and applying for 100 jobs, right? So that's 100 activities, right? I mean, if you had to create the resume, that would be 101 activities. That's what I consider an input goal that you can track and that you can measure. Whether you land a job or not, it's actually, you cannot really measure that because it's not under your control completely, right? But you should still state it, what you want at the end. So very important to know. So don't just say, oh, I want to apply for 100 jobs in 90 days. That is not enough. You need to identify what you're willing to do, which is the input goal, and what you would like to have or accomplish or achieved at the end. And that will be your output goal. So you need to know when you're goal setting the difference between those two, right? So I'll give you another example. For earning money for your, if you have a side hustle or business, reaching out to 100 companies in 90 days is something within your control. You can go to Google, Maps and see what companies are in the field that you're, if your ideal target market, and then you can reach out to them. That's an action you can take. And then output goal, right? Earn 100K in 90 days. That is not completely in your control. It might be to a certain degree, but it is more likely that if you were to contact the 100 companies, that you can earn 100K as a byproduct of that, right? So it's very important to understand the difference between this, right? So it's a mistake that I've seen many project managers also make, because they misunderstand what the input and output goals are, causing a lot of stress and misunderstanding with their teams. Okay, and I'm going to give you another example just to make it even easier to understand. So for example, say that you want to lose weight, right? You want to lose a certain amount of weight. You can say input goals, I'm going to work out, exercise 36 times in the 90 days. So that's the actions. That's the actions you're setting as a goal. Number of actions you're setting as a goal. That's an input goal. It's the actions you're willing to take. And the output goal is essentially lose 10 pounds in the next 90 days. Losing is not something you can action upon, right? It's a byproduct of you exercising or you dieting, right? So that's essentially how you have to think about it. You need both, but you need to understand specifically what are your input goals and output goals, and focus really on improving the state of your input goal, right? Number of jobs that you apply, number of companies you reached out to, number of times you exercise. So focus on improving the input goal because it's within your control. Output goal, do have it, but don't really put your mind in stress and unnecessary anxiety if you're not hitting them, because you truly can control is the input goal, right? So it's same with if you're studying for an exam. Say that you want to get an 80 on the exam, you can't just get 80% on the exam. You need to decide to study for a certain number of sessions, number of hours, maybe 100 hours you need to study, and you keep track of that, right? So that's how you kind of figure out how to set goals, how to plan, and then understand the difference between input goals and output goals. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if there's any clarification is needed, or if any comment or feedback as well on that, because I do want to get feedback from people to see if that makes sense, because it is something that is very technical. Even when I was working in tech, I had a hard time explaining this to people, but it's something that I would say leaders, if you're specifically looking to become a leader, it's something you would need to know. Okay, so let me know if that makes sense, if the difference between input and output goal and the 90-day planning. Okay, so seems to be no question. Go ahead, Tessa, please.
So I was just thinking, so basically you can have multiple input goals for an output goal.
Yes.
Right.
And you can have multiple output goals as well, but yeah,
okay.
Technically, yeah. So you can have multiple input goals, or like, for example, applying for jobs, you can say create your resume, create your LinkedIn profile, apply for 100 jobs, right? So yeah, a lot of input goals, and the idea is essentially kind of mentally wrapping your head around, okay, what is what in this project, what is an input goal?
It's basically something tangible that you can do versus the outcome, which is something that's beyond your control.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right, like sometimes like when you're in business, you're like, oh, we need to make $100,000 this month or whatever, right? So can't just do that, right? Like that's just something. But if you say, okay, we need to reach out to 100 companies, that's doable.
So it's like creating a strategy almost for achieving the output goal.
Exactly. Precisely. It's the best set of actions that you can take right now with information that is available to you.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's the way I put it. Okay. Hopefully, yeah. So very important understanding in terms of personal development, improving your positive, very important positive habit, I would say. Okay. Very good stuff. And then the way I basically, like I said, I'm creating a course on this, right? So basically what I did is I created a template, right? So this is kind of the way my template and the file looks like. So I have the goal, right? And then I talk about specifically the reasons why I have the goal, right? And then I have basically, talk about, why this goal will be useful. And then I have the status, how many of the tasks that I completed. And then I list out all the tasks that is needed. This is it's a simple format, but it basically kind of answers everything you need for the project, right? How much you completed, what was your your output goal from the top, right? You can see output goal, and then you list out all the actions, specific actions that you can do. So this is kind of the way I recommend. This kind of format is what I recommend, right? So you can say like, even after say that you're 90 days you spend on that, you can say, why did you not pass the exam? Well, you only completed 20% of the activity and actions that you designed and you created for yourself. That's why. So that's why I recommend is like I measure myself, not whether I pass this exam. I measure myself whether I completed the actions that I designed for myself. So that's how I kind of track myself and measure myself. So I know that if I take care of this very likely will be taken care of, right? So that's kind of how I display my actions, like this format, and then check them off and then date and so forth. Okay, does that make sense for everyone so far? Perfect. Fantastic. Okay, great. So that's for that. And then this is I'm gonna give you kind of a few examples on how, what type of goals, you can set. Again, this is up to you, but these are the, goals that I've, kind of types of goals that I've experimented with, right? So things of achieving peace of mind and happiness. I talked about the importance of that. Like I noticed specifically happiness is as a goal, we need to define that. If you don't define, I want to achieve peace of happiness in my life, if you don't set that goal, your subconscious mind doesn't recognize it as a goal or experience that you need to have, right? So define that. If it's deepens one's spiritual connection or faith, that could be one. Achieve a specific position or title within your field that you're passionate about, that could be one. Launch grow a business that you're passionate about. Complete a high profile project, pursue higher education, improve specific skills, maintain specific fitness level or body weight, create passive income, income stream. So things like that. It could be even improving your relationship with your family and your friends, right? So things like that. It could be by the defining and writing them down and making it clear to your conscious mind and subconscious mind is what's key, right? So that's one of the main things. So for example, say if you want to hypothetically use that input output, achieve peace of mind and happiness, you can say, what, I'm gonna read it could be, I don't know if whatever the religious faith, it could be you can say, I'm going to read the Bible 1 hour a day or 30 minutes a day. Or you can say you're going to be reading more about spiritual books and spending 1 hour a day to read spiritual books or psychology books, right? So that's kind of what I did. I'll talk about it more. I have 1 hour that I've dedicated just to read about and study about the mind and different things, right? So that's how I kind of have dedicated that. So the same thing. So you kind of decide decide what goals you want, and then you decide on the type of actions that you're willing to take and the outcome that you want at the end. Okay, so these are the examples that I can recommend for you that you can use. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Now we're going to talk about specifically a common habit, I see in a lot of highly successful individuals. So there are different people call it the different. So I think Bill Gates have something called the 7-hour rule. 5-hour rule, where he recommends that every week he puts 5 hours in on personal development, like reading books and taking courses. And it's a very common pattern I saw among highly successful individuals. The fact that they take time to read books, even NFL players like Tom Brady, he's a reader. He's a big reader. I think one of the things that I when I was researching about his practices, he have a book called 4 Agreements that he reads a lot. So a lot, especially I noticed that they're like top athletes, top professionals in their field have a tendency to learn information from other professionals through books and courses. So it's a priority number. I would say for me, this actually is one of the main things, like journaling, goal setting, and learning, right? Like studying had a huge difference in my impact on my mental health. So that's one of the main things I would recommend, not only just for maintaining good health, mental health, but to improve your performance and achieve your goals as well. Okay. And I recommend, I recommend for anyone who, for any of my clients, I recommend, if you're not reading already, start with what you love reading. I recommend reading books that are related to self-development and personal development and things like that, because they do help. For me, they have helped. That's one of the reasons I can do a lot of the things I can do. I was able to, go, achieve my career success that I've had, and even like write books. It's because I read books. Without other people's advice and guidance, I don't think I would been able to do what I'm doing right now. So that's why I invest a lot of time with that, onto that, because I know, if I feel like it is making a huge difference. And that's what I recommend for you. And start with what you love reading, right? If it's about psychology, if it's about spirituality, if it's about your work, it's fine, right? Start with that. What you love doing should be almost like, I always use what I love or what I desire as almost like a director of what I should be focusing on doing. So I love to read about personal development stuff, right? About specifically psychology. So that's why you get to hear this stuff. So I get to do what I learn about more, and talk about more. So that's how I said. So same thing I would recommend for you is start with what you love. It makes it so much more easier. Okay. And then I recommend for 30 minutes to 1 hour. But if that's too much, honestly, it's fine. 15 minutes works as well. Think of like reading books as it's called bibliotherapy, actually, right? It's like reconditioning. You're spending the time to recondition your mind and your subconscious mind and your brain to be more positive. That's the way I look at learning and studying. Okay, it's reconditioning therapy. And then write your lessons, right? The more like I tell this to people, like especially professionals that are taking exams. If they ask me, what is one of the best ways you can improve your learning, is that I say use all three levels of learning systems. Basically, auditory, which is like audio, right? And visual, which is text and images, and auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, which is taking notes and using the information in a physical way. So if you can listen, right, listen like audiobook, and take notes, and also read, if you can combine all three, that you're essentially using all three systems of learning really well. So like journaling or writing down what you have learned can extend your learning and advance your learning very quickly. Same with the repetition, right? The more you read the same stuff, the better you will get. Same with if you were to learn stuff in different formats, right? Auditory or visual, or through text, or through writing about what you read about or learned about. So they can definitely improve your level of learning and understanding, right? And that's kind of how I recommend you learn and use, like, learn what you would need to solve problems in life and work. Like a lot of the things that I've learned and I've studied is because of certain problems. I studied psychology because I had problems with not being able to make good decisions and make the right decision that would benefit me. So I started to learn how to make good decisions, right? So that's essentially how I recommend. So use books and courses to solve problems in life, and then that's essentially where I would say you will have the most effectiveness with learning and education. Okay, so 30 minutes to 1 hour a day would be the recommended prescription, I would say, for that. Okay, so any questions regarding that? And I'm going to give you a list of books and courses that, I mean, obviously, many people have idea about what book they can read, but I'm going to give you certain ones that seems to specifically in the direction of helping with personal development that seem to have guided me, and basically my clients. So one of the main things that I tell to people to read is How to Win Friends and Influence People. I know many people say that they have read this book, but there's 30 lessons in that book, or 30 strategies. If I were to tell anyone to hear, or tell anyone who say that they have read it, to give me that 30 lessons, many of them can't. I can't either, even though I'm continually studying that book, right? So those 30 principles in that book is very vital for your, I would say, success in life, because even in the book it said that 85% of our successes in life coming from relationships. So that book is, I would say, the ultimate guide to help, literally, to win friends and build stronger relationships, right? So I know it had definitely influenced my career. It's one thing to learn to become good at your job, but it's one thing to get along with people and good with people. And one of the main books that really helped me was this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And when I'm telling you, like, I would recommend, like, study this book as a course, like spend the time to like really reread and underline and really study this stuff, because it is a book that can have a huge impact in your life. And it is one of the books, Warren Buffett, he always talks about Dale Carnegie. He says that he took a course in public speaking and a communication course from Dale Carnegie, that essentially talk about the stuff you read in this book. He says, Warren Buffett says, that's one of the best courses that he has taken in his life, and he has a frame certificate on his office because of how effective Dale Carnegie's material was at that time. And then I can honestly say, I know everybody knows about this book, but it's stuff in that book is highly effective if you study them and use them in your practical life. Okay, something for you to experiment with. And another book that really made a huge difference in terms of my personal development and success was Maximum Achievement. Again, it kind of laid down the foundation how I need to think about myself, right, and how to kind of get out of like personal challenges and issues I've had. And that book essentially put the foundation that is necessary to kind of focus on. So it's a kind of big book, and I call it my the billionaires book, because one of the I was listening to one of the interviews with Brian Tracy, and he told me in the session that one of the persons who read that book came to him, and he was, by the time he was saying, when he came to him, he was saying that he was actually a janitor when he first started reading Maximum Achievement. And after he read it, and if 10 certain years goes by, a few decades go by, and he had become a billionaire because of the advice he had initially received from Maximum Achievement from Brian Tracy. So that's why I call it the Billionaires book, and I really love that book, and it made a huge difference in my life. Highly recommend for anyone who interested in personal development. Okay. Again, Atomic Habits by James Clear, pretty popular book, really effective guide on how to build good habits. And then we kind of talk about in here as well. We'll talk about some of the concepts about how to build habits slowly, but essentially good book on developing good habits. Okay, and then Power of Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy, excellent book in terms of learning emotional intelligence, right, and developing a stronger mind and a more positive mind, I would say. And then there's the other book, A Course in Miracles by Helen Schuckman. So again, this is a very spiritually spiritual text, right? It's like a Bible actually for certain people. So this book actually is it's a masterpiece on spiritual development, right? So it's I would say it's a rabbit hole on its own, but it's actually one of the most beautiful books that have been written, I would say. And I would say it's going to become even more popular in the future, this book. So essentially, these are the books that I've kind of used a lot, initially. And there's, again, in my newsletter, actually, I'm continually talking about different books, and I'm also reviewing certain books. So I'll kind of talk about that. I'll actually give you, and I know some of you are already on my newsletter, but I'll give you for anyone who wants it as well. So I have a newsletter. Basically, I send every Sunday that discusses this information, and I'm creating videos as well. But I'm also attaching and releasing my reading list as well. So if anyone's interested, you can sign up for my newsletter there. Okay, I know some of you might be already on it, but if not, join it. Okay, so so that's what I have for learning and education. So any questions about that? About studying and learning and why that would be effective? So I mean, a lot of these things have effects on your subconscious mind. We'll talk about that because like I'm kind of giving you habits as techniques and tactics, but there is a framework why, if you look at it, why all these things, if you were to put it together, can be very effective. We'll talk about that more as we go. But if anyone has any questions in the meantime, feel free to ask away. Okay, perfect. So one of the patterns, again, we talk about specific patterns in highly successful individuals, right? So another pattern that I discovered in these individuals on how they manage time, right, and how they manage productivity. And then again, it's a pattern that I recognize. They prioritize how they manage time, right? So a key practice that I've discovered from them that I do, right? I use, anything I tell, basically I practice them myself. I'm not just saying because, I think it's a good idea. I practice them and get results from it. So that's what I'm repeating them with you. So one of the main things that I've discovered that really helps me complete my work and be productive is essentially write down all the activities, tasks that I need to do in my life in one place, right? Because I know, when we have especially about 5 projects, right, your task will be in 5 different sheets. But what I recommend you do is that you bring all the tasks, basically running checklist of things that you're doing, that you're checking off. Okay, you need to pay this bill, you need to do this task, you need to do this. So basically, list of items that you need to do, and keeping that item continually updated and making sure that you're finishing things up on that is a very important practice. And I know many people have all their tasks and all their activities in their head, and this can obviously lead into a lot of overwhelm and anxiety naturally, right? So imagine you have about 5 projects and you have to remember like 30 tasks on each of them. That's a lot of work. That's unnecessary. You don't need to do that. So what I recommend you do instead is you bring all the tasks into one place, and then you start chipping away at them as much as you can. And some of them, sometimes it might feel overwhelming because of the amount of things you need to do, but at least everything is one place, right? So that's one of the main things that I recommend you do to make it easier. Don't keep it in your head. Keep it on, ideally, spreadsheet, Google Sheets. I use Google Sheets. I just use everything in one place. And then I check them off as I complete my tasks that I need to do. Okay, so that's what I recommend you do. And then you can also obviously order them based on urgency and importance, right? So basically, if you're using Google Sheet, you can literally drag and drop the 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 role, based on the level of importance in it is needed. Okay. And then blocking time, right? This is something, a practice that really helps in terms of managing your time. So basically, once you have created your task and ordered your task in your urgency and important, now it's time to basically block time in your calendar to finish them off, right? So if you don't take time to like complete them, it's no point that you spend all that time organizing it. So block time to put it on your calendar to complete them, and then check them off as you complete them, and then make sure that um, you don't also get like you don't work on multiple tasks at the time, right? So that's a good way to also get distracted and lose focus and not stay motivated. Multitasking. So when you're working and set the task, make sure that you set it as don't work on multiple things, or watch go take a look at your Facebook while you're working on. Just get it done and move on. Like, even if you're applicable, if you're working or if you're studying for exam, right? If you're working on your own projects, it's the same thing, right? So it's a practice that needs to be developed. Okay. And then another main thing is that set a clear objective for each work session, right? So for each time that you block in your calendar, make sure that you know what you're going to complete by the time you're done. And many people say, oh, I'm just going to study, or I'm just going to work. I don't think that's a good practice. What you should do instead is that if you're studying, I'm going to focus on completing chapter 2, right? If you're working on a report or for work, you say, I'm going to focus on finishing this report. So mentality of completion and finishing is actually needed when you're working on objectives. If you just say, oh, I'm just going to work on it, you will work on it endlessly. And the projects and tasks can take a lot of time. So to reverse that, the best is like, no, my good job, I'm allocated 90 minutes to do this. My job is to finish in that 90 minutes as best of my ability. If you cannot finish it, no problem. Create another 30 minutes or 90 minutes or whatever you need to finish that activity you need. But mentality you should take to every objective, completion. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense what I'm referring to specifically. Okay, great, fantastic. So another point is like, plan the day and the week in advance, right? Again, it helps you to kind of keep in track and keep yourself organized. It becomes even more easier to do if you have identified your goals, 5 goals, and then you have identified your tasks, right? So then it becomes a lot more easier to advance your plan your week, right? Like like I said, new quarter is coming, right? 12 weeks are coming for you. So what are you going to do each of the week? Right? That's one of the things I did. Like, think of your life as university. So new quarter or new semester is coming. So what are you planning to accomplish in the new quarter or new semester? What courses are you taking? Right? In other words, what courses of actions, what projects are you taking? Are you finishing in the next 90 days? So that's a good way to kind of position that, and then plan out what are you going to do in the next 90 days, next 12 weeks or so. Okay, so that's what I would recommend. And we talk about avoid multitasking, not a useful practice if you want to improve your performance. You want to make sure that you focus on one task at a time. And then Pomodoro technique can help you get started. Essentially what it is essentially you keep a timer for 25 minutes and then you focus on completing the task in that 25 minutes. So it's just basically a time management technique that you can use. So you 25 minutes you work, 5 minutes you break, 25 minutes you work, 5 minutes you break, and you can go up until your work is essentially pretty much done. You can use that technique. Okay. So any questions so far regarding the productivity and time management system? So that's kind of the process I used, right? So, and I don't think like, I'm kind of doing this like 8 hours a day. I don't like, like my schedules are very, like, I would say I put in about 2 to 3 sessions of strong 90-minute sessions, right? You can do like full day of this, you know what I mean? So like I plan like, if I can complete like 2 to 3 tasks, major tasks, in 90-minute blocks, that would be great. So that's the way I would kind of recommend for you as well. 90-minute blocks, and what can you complete? Okay. So let's see, what do we have next? So I'm going to talk a little bit of exercises because it's one of the things that I've seen, again, a common pattern among highly effective individuals, and how highly, especially athletes, you can see that, right? World-class athletes. So highly effective people seems to be exercise a lot. And it doesn't seem like they try to, like, become bodybuilders or, become models. I don't think they are using it for that. The way I started to see exercise when I was researching them is that how much exercise can be used to build a resilient and a strong mind. And that's essentially how I kind of build exercise. I exercise as well. I essentially find the most favorite exercises that I can do. For example, I love playing basketball, right? So much of my exercise involves, playing basketball about, 2 to 3 times a week, right? So what I do for my exercise, I figure out what are some exercises that can give a good a physical workout that I love, right? And I also, lift a little bit of weights as well, but most of my exercises involve, things I like. Some of you may like yoga, right? Some of you may like martial arts. Some of you may like dance, right? Mix it up, right? And use it to build mental strength, right? So that's one of the things that I would recommend. And also, people have, when they're, working out and, exercising, many people try to, like, exhaust their body or work till failure. I recommend this. What I recommend that people they should do is they focus on developing a durable body, right? A body that can take on a lot of stress and difficulty, but still become stronger and healed, right? So many people try to lose weight or develop big muscles, but the mentality you should focus on as a goal is to help your body become durable and very resilient, and can take anything, right? So developing and using the body and exercising in a way that makes your body durable will have a long-term impact. And also, you will always lose weight, because in order to make it durable, you have to work out consistently. And then also, because you're working out consistently, you will lose weight faster and you also become stronger. But mentality of developing a durable mind, but before you develop a durable mind, durable body is key, right? And it starts with you figuring out what exercises do you love actually doing, and can you do little bit at least every day. And many people think, oh, it's about, you need to work out 30 minutes or 1 hour. I don't recommend that. I recommend, because the mentality is different, it's about level of consistency, not level of intensity, right? So what I recommend for people, workout, if you're not working out at all, start with 3 minutes, right? 3 minutes a day, no miss. That's how I began. I actually, when I started workout about consistently about 4 years ago, I was weighing about like 220, 230 pounds. But then I started to work out and play basketball. Within a year and a half, I was around 170 pounds. So I lost a lot of weight using this system. And how I got started, just 3 minutes or 3 sets, and I didn't miss. And then as time went by, I would make it, 5 sets, 6 sets, 7 sets. And then some days I would even go outside and play basketball, and some days I would go do martial arts, right? So I mix it up. But I made a decision to exercise 3 times a week. That means 36 times per quarter. So I made a goal, right, to weigh 180 pounds and become durable and stronger and work out. I remember we talk about input and output goals. So I made an input goal of working out and exercising or playing sports 36 times in the next quarter, or in the 90-day period. And then the byproduct was essentially, losing to 180 pounds. Okay. So that's kind of the way I would recommend for you as well. Make it enjoyable. Don't, if you don't like doing cardio, don't do cardio. To go play sports outside, right? If you don't like doing weights, do what you love doing. So it's that mentality needs to come from this as well. Okay. So hopefully that's clear. Any questions with regards to that? Okay, perfect. All right, so that's the exercise one. And another major pattern I recognize in highly successful individuals, to recognize how organized they are, and how, I mean, more than the cleanliness, I one of the things that I recognize how organized they are, how well they keep in track of things, right? So one of the main things that I decided to do was essentially do the same, essentially keep myself, keep my environment organized, keep, make my bed when I wake up, keep my desk and room organized, making sure that I shower in the morning, because one of the main things that I discovered is that, like, showering in the morning is actually a major productivity hack. And it's actually Elon Musk is one who talk about this. He says that one of the major productivity hacks in his life is showering in the morning. So I experimented with it, and I can tell you the same thing, is that showering in the morning is actually has a huge impact how much work you do, how good you feel in the day. So something you to experiment with as well. Okay. And you keep your house organized. So, and again, this it comes to not just keeping your room, keeping your desk and your house. It involves you keeping your work organized, keeping things in order, keeping things in proper folders, keeping things clean. And in order is a major impact, can have a major impact in your mental health, and you developing essentially a highly successful life. It's just a pattern again. I recognize in highly effective and highly effective individuals. Okay. Hopefully that's clear. So is that it? So that's essentially the key habits, right? So we're gonna talk a little bit about more on how to develop these habits and make it easier, because you might be feel like, what, I can't do all of these right away. I'm barely feeling happy, right? So some of these things might not you might feel like it's not easy right away to do. So I'm going to talk about how to make it even easier to do. Okay. So you recognize, what, like like having positive habits can have a huge impact in your life, because one of the main things about the positive habits is that it has a compounding effect, right? Just as negative habits have a effect, compounding can have a tremendous effect. Like you will see, like one of the things I learned from Jim Rohn, he asked, like, would you suffer from the pain of regret or pain of discipline? So from my life, from what I've discovered so far, from where I'm at right now, I rather pay the pain of discipline than pain of regret, because I remember I can look back in my life and it's like, what, there are certain things I wish I did. There are certain things I wish I did start. I wish I got started earlier, and that certain things I wish I did just sooner, right? So for me, I'm in my life in point in my life, certain things actually, like pain of the regret is more painful than pain of discipline for me. So that's one of the things. So I discovered, okay, what are the best actions or best behaviors or best habits that I can do that ensures at least certain level of success in my life. So I researched, and I told you I covered them. So that's what I say. And if I were to, now I'm experimenting, what if I were to do 6 of them and see what happens, right? So what I noticed, that when you continue to do your positive habits, you have a tendency to replace or extinguish your negative habits as well, right? So having positive habits not only just improves your life, it actually empties out your negative habits, because you're putting less and less time and less thoughts into that. For example, say that you have a negative habit of, like, thinking negatively about yourself and accusing yourself or condemning yourself for whatever reason. That time that you're spending on that can be utilized for you to learn something, right? That then you can essentially use your abilities and skills to contribute to society and advance even more. And therefore you get essentially more money, right? More income, because more you solve problems for other people, the higher your chance of you earning more money and more respect and recognition, right? So having positive habits have a multiple effects on life and multiple effects in areas. So even if you're just trying and attempting, can have a huge impact, right? So the first thing I would say is, like, figure out, okay, what are the ones that you're going to prioritize first. You don't prioritize first. You don't need to prioritize all the ones that I talk about here, right? Before, you can start with maybe journaling, maybe reading books, right? Maybe keeping things cleaned up, maybe exercise. Start with the ones that you resonate with the most, that you want to do more, and begin with that. And then start with really, really, really small. This is, again, I cannot emphasize enough. I think the fact that the main reason I fell off the wagon, right, of being consistent is because I didn't know I can start small. I didn't know I didn't know, like, if you can get away with working out 5 minutes and then call it a workout. I have 5 minute workouts. I have 5 minute study sessions, right? So they are okay. You're okay to do 3 minutes. I started like things that I didn't really like exercise in the beginning, doing only 3 minutes a day, right? But I did it every day. 3 sets, right? The same with reading books. I started with simply reading 10 minutes, right? 5-10 minutes, something I like, because I knew it was going to help me. I mean, if LeBron James does it, if Jeff Bezos does it, if that helping them, why wouldn't it help me? So I did it and it helped. So that's what I would say, is that don't be afraid to start really, really small. It's actually an advantage if you can get your mind to start small at things. All right. And then continually start small, right? Many people think, you know what, because I did like hour yesterday, I had to do 1 hour today. No, only focus on getting 10 minutes done. So this is kind of how I practice my good habits, because for me, rather than the product itself, byproduct itself, it's the habit or the process that is more valuable for me, because that's what's gonna enable for me to have the successes I want. Like, I will be more happier with myself because I have better positive habits than if I were to get some sort of an outcome or some sort of a reward of that habit. For me, I rather have a good habit. Like, for example, I love the fact that I have a habit of reading books. I love the fact that I journal. I love the fact that I exercise, and it's easier, these things, right? These habits makes me happy on its own, not because of the effects it has, because of the activity itself. So that's the way. And the way I started it is by doing like habits with I love doing, not because no one forced me, right? Neither should you force yourself as well. Okay, so that's the idea and the mentality that I would recommend for anyone when they're starting to build positive habits.